Welcome to the Open Talent Report, the award-winning podcast where we dive deep into the emerging trends in global employment, the future of work, the talent crisis, the demographic deficit, and the new world of work with our expert host, Connor Heaney. Connor is the managing director at CXC EMEA, a company that takes the hassle out of finding, compliantly engaging and paying contractors anywhere in the world. In this podcast, Connor brings you captivating conversations with top CEOs, visionary founders, and industry experts. Together, they shed light on all things open talent and the evolving nature of work itself. So grab your headphones and join us on this exhilarating journey.
Hello and welcome to this week's show, where I am delighted to say it's our 100th episode. That means we've got our 100th guest on the show, and I genuinely could not think of a better guest than Ryan Baker, who is the president of Monument Consulting, who has become, I have to say, Ryan, a really great friend of mine over the years. I really value our friendship. We met back in 2018 on a European tour that you were doing, and you very kindly invited me along on a business trip. And I think it's fair to say, and I hope it's fair to say, that we've become firm friends ever since. And we've had so many great times and days and on occasional nights together. And it's been really fascinating, Ryan, watching you develop as a business leader. And also it's been amazing to build such a successful partnership between our respective organizations, Monument Consulting and CXC, Ryan. So all credit to you. It's rare, I think, in life to meet someone that you get on with so well, but I think it's also rare, and all credit to you, to meet someone in business, Ryan, that manages to combine really strong ethics and morals and doing business fairly and doing business the right way and treating customers, clients, partners, and of course your team in a way that is meaningful and in a way that matters. And I've really learned a lot from working with you, Ryan, and I think you're one of the good blokes out there. So I'm really delighted actually that you're on the show and that we get to mark our 100th episode with a really great guy. And before we hear your story, Ryan, I just want to say thanks also to all of our listeners that tune in every week. We're really grateful, and thanks for doing that. I hope you take the learnings from the show, because we've had great guys like Ryan on. We've had the Doug Leabys on. We've had Jill Bassett, who used to head up Manpower in the UK. We've had entrepreneurs, we've had business leaders, we've had authors, we've had really amazing people. And of course, we've had procurement leaders and HR leaders on the show who have really shared their story. And thanks to them and all of our guests who've taken the time to come on the show. So back to Ryan. Ryan is one of the good guys, as I mentioned. He's the president of Monument Consulting. And I really cannot wait for you, our audience, to hear Ryan's story and Ryan's thoughts. So Ryan, a very warm welcome to the show. I think that's one of the longest introductions, maybe the most emotional, but I'm delighted you're here. How the hell are you doing, my friend?
Doing wonderful. Thanks so much for having me, Connor. And I don't know how red my face is right now with all those compliments. Have to have you send a note to my wife so she knows how amazing. I'm one of the good blokes. As I'm gonna pull that up and put that in me. So
well, Ryan, all credit.
Thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to it. I know we've been trying to do this for a while, and we're here, so that's great. And I mean, honestly, not to make this a love fest, but back at you. Like, it's been an awesome experience working together. We've had a lot of fun along the way too, and we have become friends. I think I'm going to see you in about 6-7 weeks when I'm over in Ireland with the family. So excited to see you on a personal note, not talk business at all.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll only come up once or twice, but Ryan, can't wait to see you and the family. So Ryan, with that, we're going to get into your story, Ryan, because what I find really interesting about the show is not many of our guests, bar one, deliberately knew what they were going into when they went into the staffing and recruitment world. And I include myself in that, right? Stupidly, I moved from, it worked out well in the end, but I thought I was going to be a stockbroker, right? Or some sort of trader. And it turns out I was, I guess, a trader of people, right? You know, trading contractors with clients. But Ryan, I'd love to hear your story. What's the origin story? And, you're president of Monument Consulting. They're a really big company, part of the Insight Global Group, which we'll come to later in the show. But what's the pop quiz, Ryan, story? Because I think it's well worth hearing.
Sure. Yeah. So from a career perspective, I would 100% agree with you. I don't think anybody goes to university, college, whatever you call it, wherever you live in the world, right, and say to themselves, I think I'm going to go get into staffing, right? Like nobody does that. They want to become a doctor. They want to become a lawyer. They want to fly planes, whatever the case may be, something more exciting than staffing. So I was the same way. I went to school and thought I was going to come out and be doing sports broadcasting. I have some resume tapes out there. We won't share this today, although that would have been fun. And I was pretty decent at it, but, I kind of had a change of heart as, I came upon graduation and all that. So I went into the staffing world, not knowing what the heck I was interviewing for when I interviewed originally. And I actually interviewed at several firms. So 1 year ago, and ended up, as you mentioned earlier, at Insight Global originally. And it's been a 21-year run in some form or fashion with all the different brands now. So, but yeah, I mean, it's been a lot of learning early on in your career, as you can imagine, just learning the business, and making a lot of mistakes, having the wins, having the challenges. I mean, I think I got demoted twice over an 11-year period, which always is kind of terrible. Most people, don't stick around when they get demoted. They get, their feelings hurt or they feel deflated. And I'm like, heck no, you can't do that to me. Like, maybe I wasn't perfect, but I'm going to recover from that. I'm a big believer in like response. I'm a sports guy, right? You're going to have adversity in your career. You're going to have adversity in life. You're going to have adversity in a football game or a soccer game or whatever it might be. And it's not, it's really important how you respond. And so I kind of had that same mentality. I'm also very loyal. I'm just kind of a loyal person. I like to be around and stick around with a company that I believe in and a culture that I believe in. So look, you're going to have ups and downs. You're going to have good years in business. You're going to have bad years in business. You're going to have, flat years in business. But, if you stay the course, I truly believe you'll win the race. I think a lot of people just won't finish, right? They'll get discouraged or they'll walk away. I think if it's a battle of attrition in some ways, and I will tell anybody that wants to go, anybody who wants to go head to head, like I will outlast you.
That's right. But Ryan, I think the same. I think if you've got the right work ethic and the right attitude, even if you have to go back 2, 3, 5 steps backwards, as long as you were willing and ready to continue to go forward, then you will, right? The opportunities will come. They will come because you've got that resilience, you've got that positive, your head's up, your head's not down, you're looking, you're ready for the opportunity. And I think that's really good advice, Ryan, that you've given right off the bat, right at the start of the show. And I also think, Ryan, that the staffing sector is probably the most meritocratic sector you can go in, right? Because as you well know, and I love this phrase, I've heard it recently and I can't remember who I should attribute it to, but it's along the lines of people talk, but numbers scream, right? And what I mean by that can be taken in business as a negative, but I take it if you think of staffing as a positive. If you're good on the numbers and you generate revenue, typically you can go upstream pretty fast, right? I think I became my first sort of CEO type role when I was 33, right? I was too early for it, Ryan, and subsequently got fired, and rightly so, right? I deserved it. I wasn't ready. Yeah, exactly. I thought I had all the chops. Dude, I exact same. I thought I had all the chops, but I didn't because I didn't understand how numbers work. I could generate numbers, revenue, profit, but I didn't understand how that all interlinked. I wasn't ready. I had to go 2, 3 steps backward to actually sit in the president's seat now that I've been sitting in. But would you agree, Ryan, that in the staffing sector, it is a meritocracy? If you're good enough and you can win the clients, you can win the relationships, you can ascend the ladder pretty quickly. Not always rightly so in some cases I've seen, but I think in my own case, and it sounds like yours, that, if you're good enough, you're good enough and you can get up the ladder pretty smoothly. Not smoothly, but quickly.
Yeah, no, I I would agree with your statement for sure. It's definitely a meritocracy for sure, and which I think is a good thing. People want to be promoted and move up in their careers because they earned it, right? Not because it's given to them for a particular reason, right? What do you hear the most? What do you hear the most in business? It's like, oh, it's a political culture. It's all politics or whatever the case may be. Like, you don't want that. You want it to be pretty black and white and quantitative if it can be. And in staffing overall, the industry as a whole, whether you're on the MSP side, the staffing side, you're a technology, I think for the most part, you're right. It's, hey, put your money where your mouth is, right? Like, show me the number. And it's not only part of the equation.
Of course.
Because I will speak out of both sides of my mouth now. One thing that I have seen over the years is that some of your best producers have no business being in leadership roles. And some of your best leaders aren't the best producers. I think a good leader does have to show their worth. They have to produce at some level. They can't be terrible producers. Like I would say that I was an above average producer most of the time from a sales perspective. I mean, I had some really good years, but most of the time I was above average. I was never like the number one sales guy, but I think I'm a pretty good leader, I hope. But this isn't the place to brag, right? Nobody likes to talk about themselves. But I think like being a good leader, there are different attributes and different things you need to focus on than being a good producer.
Yeah.
So that's only like kind of audible, I would call in that meritocracy is that your top producers may not always be the best leaders.
Yeah. I think that's also a fair comment. For sure. Like, Ryan, I hadn't thought about asking that, but I think roughly we're the same age. Of course, you look much younger, right? But I think I think we're about 40, 42, 43, somewhere in that range. I'm 43. So been running CXC in Europe for the last 9 years. I think you've been running or being president of Monument Consulting, is it for 7 or 8 years now, Ryan? Roughly, is that right? Or 9?
So since 2019, January 2019. So it'll be 6 years and January.
6 years. And it's interesting, Ryan, when you think about leadership. So I wasn't trained for this position, right? And I'm sort of learning on the job, which is interesting, right? So, the mistakes have been less than the wins, right? Which is good, but mistakes have been made. And it's really interesting when you become a leader relatively young, like in your case, and I think in my case, I think I was 35 or whatever when I started up with CXC in Europe. And it was much easier at the beginning when the organization was much smaller, but more complexity comes as the organization gets bigger and there's more mouths to feed and there's more emphasis on profitability and scalability and all those things. And I think, Ryan, that's really, in my case, where you have to search in yourself and find that resilience and dig in. What's been your learnings, Ryan, becoming a business leader, obviously in Insight Global, and then moving into Monument as the president? Have you any learnings to share with our audience in terms of what might help someone that's on that leadership journey?
Oh my gosh, where to begin? So this is an area where I have thought to myself, I should write a book. I should write a book. Like, I don't know if I want to read a book, but I should. It would obviously probably take. It would look like 80% of other business books and leadership books, because leadership is, it's not one size fits all. But I think the most important thing is you really do have to be true to yourself. And I know that's a common statement, but what I mean by that is like, trust your gut as a leader. I believe in you got to find a good balance between like empathy, which is different than sympathy.
Yes.
You have to have both of those. You have to have empathy and sympathy. But there's also like this business side that sometimes conflicts with both of those other things.
Yeah.
And I just try to be really transparent, as transparent as I possibly can be with my leadership team, with our people. I won't go into exact commentary or the situation we were dealing with early in the year, but there was a situation, there was some conflict in what the business needed, in what we believed the people needed, right? Of the business. And we ended up finding a nice middle ground, but really what what had to be done was like explaining both sides. I had to really be intentional about saying, okay, I hear what our line level leaders need, our managers, our senior managers, directors need for their people. Here's what the business needs, and this is why. How do we marry the two and make it work for both? And I think I did that in a smaller group with our more senior leaders. Then I broadened the group, did it with all of our leaders. And it was just so refreshing to be able to explain like the challenges I was having, trying to accomplish what we needed to accomplish for the business.
Yeah.
And then what kind of the organization wanted. And it was good to just get it all out on that table. And then everybody was like, oh, I get it. You're not just being a pain. You're not just like pulling back in that area because you want to be a jerk or something. No. That's like the business is trying to solve a problem too. We're trying to solve a problem. There's a little bit of conflict. So how do you get that done? And it was just like really nice to be able to say, can I just be honest with all you guys? Like, this is what we have to do. We have to figure that out some way. How do we make sure that you guys still get a little bit of what you want or all of what you want, and we can still accomplish that?
Yeah.
And it just it required a lot of transparency. And I think in the past, I may have been like not ready or nervous to share what the business wanted or needed, because you're like, oh, you don't want to look like, is it greedy? Is it this or that? No. Like, what's most important is that the business is thriving. If the business is thriving, we can do a lot more fun things.
Correct.
So let's make sure the business is thriving, and then we can do all these fun things, and extras, and maybe even a little more for all of our folks. So, then like another thing I would say is just humanize work. And that's another big statement, but like that you've heard probably before, but we're like all people. I'm making like the most Captain Obvious statement ever, but we're all like, my direct reports are people, their folks that report to them are people. They have lives, they have doctor's appointments, they have kids situations, they have pipes bust, they have all these things that happen in our daily lives that you have to remember create stress outside of these walls and seep into these walls.
Yes.
Right? Like, I know that if there's something not right at home for whatever it might be, and it could be something really exciting too. It could be like a wedding that's going on, or it could be a death in the family. It could be marital arguments, you name it, whatever it is. Like, you bring those things with you to work, and if you just humanize that and can go back to that empathy statement, it can impact their work for an extended period of time because they have a job.
Okay.
But I think it's okay if you're a leader and you're like, look, what's going on? How can I help reduce the load for you at work for a few weeks so that you can get that figured out? And like, that goes so far. And I think for a long time, I probably didn't think that way as a leader, like early on in my career. And then you realize like how much of a difference that makes for your people. And if your people are happy, they're going to work hard, and there's going to be less turnover, and your clients are happier. Everything kind of takes care of itself.
Yeah, I agree. And I think they're really tremendous business lessons, Ryan, from you. And I don't think they're as obvious as you might think, actually, right? And I think that humanizing piece and empathy piece can be missed. And I think what I've learned in my career is from working for the guys or girls that don't have that empathy and don't treat people as humans, I've sort of taken what they did do and thinking to myself, I will never behave like that, because I believe that one should be grateful for the people that are working with and for you, Ryan, right? If you can't express thanks and admiration for what they do, particularly if they're doing stuff that you have no idea what they're actually doing. Like, I think some of the people that work with and for us, Ryan, that we've collaborated together over the years, like, they're doing things with SAP Fieldglass and Beeline and other platforms that I can understand conceptually, but to go in and actually do it and make it happen and make it beautiful and make it a scene, I'm like, no, those people, they deserve our admiration and gratitude, right? Because they'll do things that we can never do, right? And probably, let's face it, don't want to do. So I think that's a great set of lessons for our listeners, and particularly for those that are business leaders that want to improve as business leaders. And I think, Ryan, having spent a lot of time with you over the years, I think the constant that I've observed with you is that you always want to get better, that you always want to learn, that you always want to try something new, that you want to always improve. And I think for me, having met 100 business leaders on this show for the last 3 years, right? 100 business leaders. That's a commonality. They want to improve. They don't accept the status quo. They don't accept no. They don't accept maybe. They always want to improve what they're doing and how they're doing. And I think I've witnessed that with you over the years for sure, mate.
Yeah. No just means not right now. That's what I always tell myself.
This is what I love. I love this. I love it. I have to say, I share that view myself. So right, for the benefit of our audience, the benefit of our listeners, please tell us about Monument Consulting, the challenges that your company and your team typically solve for.
So what do we solve for? So first off, Monument Consulting is a managed services company for contingent workforce, programs. So what is contingent workforce? It's temporary labor, it's staff augmentation, it's SOW, service procurement, it's payroll workers, employer of record type workers. So it's all those things. Contingent workforce just kind of encompasses all of that. And as you can imagine, in the world we live in today, there are a lot of companies out there, a lot of Fortune 1000 companies and companies that are not Fortune 1000 that utilize contingent labor quite a bit to run their business.
Yes.
So what we usually do, and this is the primary portion of our business, kind of like the flagship offering, as one Rohan Das likes to call it, one of our sales guys. I like that phrase, flagship offering. But MSP can mean a lot of things. Like there's a lot of companies that are called MSPs. Again, I mentioned we do it specifically for contingent labor. But if you can imagine a company that has 1,000 contract workers and everybody's kind of just doing their own thing when it relates to those 1,000 workers. You've got some folks in maybe non-IT areas of the business. You've got folks in a distribution center that are temporary. You've got folks in IT. You've got SOW and staff aug workers in IT. And, everybody's just kind of doing their own thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's working, right? The business is going its merry way. Like it's growing, all those things, but could you do it better? Right? Could you do it better? I think everybody, to your point a minute ago, you're either getting worse or you're getting better. There's no staying the same. And so when I think about a company that uses all these contractors and maybe doesn't have a formal process in place, we go in and help build it. Sometimes, many times, that looks like a managed service where they say, you know what, Monument, you guys are the experts here. Why don't you come in and run this, category of spend for us and make sense of it all, give us visibility to how many workers we have, seasonality, ups, downs within contingent labor, help us with our rates. Are we paying the right rates? Are we paying too much? Are we paying too little? Help us with compliance. That's a big area. Obviously today, in our world that we live in with, you think about different countries and different regions and within countries, different states, it just, compliance can get really complex. So
Yes.
Making sure that the suppliers that are providing your contingent work, that they're compliant with, all different local, states, national laws that might exist. Because that's important because you can get, you're an expert in this area, Connor.
Yes.
Talking to the expert in this area, but, compliance is very important. So we're helping them with that. Reporting analytics is more important than ever.
Yes.
So in addition to just knowing how many contingent workers you have and making sure they're compliantly managed, and then you're working with the right firms to provide that labor, what are the numbers telling us? We talked about numbers earlier in the meritocracy. Numbers are important. It's not the only thing that matters. Quantitative data is important, but so is qualitative. But they don't even have that quantitative data. So, we utilize all the visualization tools that exist today. We utilize the various VMSs to collect that data and then package it up nicely so that the business can actually make smart decisions for the enterprise, right? So our
Yes.
client, so they can make better decisions based on their contingent workforce. So at a high level, that's what we do. That's kind of that MSP version of that. That's when they say,
Yes.
hey, you take it, you do this for us. There's some clients out there where they don't want to give you the keys to the Ferrari, right? They're like, no, we got this. We've got the people to do it. Maybe it's cultural, right? Like there's certain companies out there that they just do most of it themselves. They do a lot of things themselves, and that's okay. So we have an offering for that too, and we've always had that in our culture. We're very consultative by nature. That's why it's in the name, Monument Consulting. But about I would say 80 to 85% of our revenue is still that MSP space, but there's a lot of companies out there that just want our guidance, right? They want advisory services. They want guidance. They want to stand up a tool like a Beeline, like a Bentley, like a Fieldglass, and we can help them with that. And then get them prepared properly to manage it themselves down the road. So, and that's perfectly fine with Monument. We don't want to force a square peg into a round hole. Like if that's going to work better for your organization, then let's go that route, and if you are going to thrive more with the MSP model, then let's go that route, and we can help you either way.
Yeah. I think, Ryan, I would describe what you're offering as the modern MSP. I can't think of a better name, because it strikes me that in the MSP sector that there, on a general basis, has been a lack of innovation, right? Because it's been dominated by a relatively small number of players, right? Who don't know, if you're the 100-pound gorilla in the room, you don't always need to be the most agile gorilla or the most agile monkey in the room. I'm probably not getting my point across properly, but I would describe what you guys are doing as a modern MSP. It's almost completely flexible. It's customizable. It's geographically distinct. It's not a black box. It's multifaceted. There's a lot of design work that goes into it. My guess or my assumption is that gives you a competitive edge on that side of things. That if you're comparing yourselves potentially to some of the massive players out there, that's point number one, Ryan. I'll come back to you with your thoughts on that in a second. But point number two is, according to staffing industry analysts, around 50% of large enterprises now have what's called an internally managed MSP. And it strikes me that second offering that you guys have is well catered for that market, right? So you're basically saying, hey, listen, you guys got this. There's elements of this that I think you'll need our support, advice, and consulting around. We got you, right? So no worries. Is that a fair sort of description of what you guys do, Ryan? Is that too simplistic?
No, I think you nailed it. So there's, like I said before, there's kind of like if you think of a buffet, right?
Yes.
Yes. The buffet, you can go, yeah, right? Who doesn't love a buffet?
Exactly.
So you get, that's like the MSP. That's like, you just get it all. We're going to do everything for you to your heart's desire. But then there's other companies, I think of like the a la carte menu. They don't need it all, right? They've got the ability to do the like rec to check piece of it or whatever the case may be. Maybe they need more rigor around reporting analytics or some compliance help, or they just need a rate card refresh. Those kind of things that are common in programs, but they just maybe don't have the internal expertise to do that to the best ability, right? Like they might on a scale 1 to 10 be able to do it at a scale on a 7, right? But we can go in and do it, 10 out of 10. So and then that's for maybe a program that's already stood up internally. Like those are the things where we can come in and enhance the program and help them where they have gaps. And then there's the whole decision on the front end that I was alluding to earlier. Maybe you're going to go MSP route, or maybe you're going to go internal front, and we just do what's right for the customer. And sometimes they change their mind later. Yeah. Sometimes the company wants to bring in the MSP to start. I know this happens to us and other competitors. Like the agreement on the front end was, hey, let's get this set up. Let's do a 3-year deal. You show us how to do it, and we're going to take it back over in a few years. Totally fine, right? Build, optimize, transfer, that kind of thing. Or it's the opposite. Maybe they started off as a consulting client, stood them up, years go by, and then they say, we actually think you could do it better as an outsourced partner. Do you want to do this? And that's so they can go either way, which is the flexibility you're alluding to. Just do a good job, whatever we are asked to do, whatever we're asked to deliver on by the client. If we just give them our best, if we deliver excellence, they will be a client for a long time.
Yes.
And wherever it takes us in the future, we're happy to go.
Yeah, I love that, Ryan. There's a beautiful simplicity in what you've just said, but I just want to repeat a phrase that you've said because it means a lot, and I think it's often overlooked by many, and it's about doing what's right for the customer. It's not about, and this is one of the many reasons I always enjoy our conversations, Ryan, because that strong ethics and morals that you've got, and being a good bloke, as they say in Aussie, and most of my colleagues are Australia in the leadership team, so have probably been impacted by their use of language. But I think that doing the right thing for the customer is of fundamental and great importance, Ryan, because many organizations that you may or may not compete with will typically shoehorn what they believe the solution to be, right? And that's not always doing the right thing for the customers. It's doing the right thing for them, but it's not doing the right thing for the customers, right? And I really love that integrity piece about you and your company, Ryan, because I think they're the things that actually make you positively different in the marketplace.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's a balance of understanding. You really going back to the listening, right? You have to listen to your customer. You have to understand what their goals are, what their pain points are, and then make recommendations.
Yes.
And then you can take those recommendations, or they can say the hell with those recommendations, right? But
yes,
I want you to do this. But you can always come out. We told you should have gone this route. No, but at the end of the day, I do think they want us to be experts. They want us to be subject matter experts in the space. So they do want recommendations. They do want guidance. But you do have to understand what the challenges are first, and then make the proper recommendations. So whether it's self-managed, whether it's hybrid, like we're in the middle of a deal process right now where we're pretty well positioned, and we're going to build out something we've never built before.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. It's fun though. Right?
Yes.
And I can't go into details and name names yet or anything like that, but it's not quite MSP and it's not consulting. It's different. But it's fun. And can we do it? We sat back and said, can we do that? Yeah, we can do that. Yeah. It's interesting. We haven't done that before, but we can do that. And it's just understanding the commercial model is a little unique and things like that. But it's fun to be able to be flexible enough as a company or agile enough as a company to come through for the customer because they need something a little different. So I remember one of my stakeholders at an account we ultimately didn't win, but he was a buddy of mine. He brought us into another customer down the road that we did win. So we did work with him eventually.
Yes.
But gentlemen used to say, we're a unique snowflake. And I was like, well, that's great because we're built for that, because we can be agile and flexible enough to, bring 80% of the solution, but be flexible enough for that 20% that makes you unique to make sure we solve for that too.
Love it. I love it. So, Ryan, I want to come on to something that I've been thinking about a lot. I've been reading a lot. So if you look at most Western labor markets, including the USA, I think if I look at the USA labor market, I think it's probably as good as it has been since when President Nixon was in charge back, 50 years ago almost, or just over 50 years ago, almost close to full employment or at full employment. I know the non-farm labor report came out last week or the week before. I haven't got across that just yet, but I will. But I think things are looking pretty good over there. Same in Ireland, Netherlands, Germany, UK, right? Labor market is absolutely packed, right? People are in jobs. But then on the flip side, you got loads of companies hiring, or trying to hire actually is more accurate, like it's going out of fashion, right? There's jobs being released like bloody gangbusters, right? So you got those two factors, full employment, reduced labor force. You got things like COVID, which impacted the labor force dramatically, of course. People came out, some people died, sadly. Some people are long-term injured for a whole host of, things that we won't get into, but really as a result of COVID. And then you've got this demographic deficit or decline, whereby Western labor markets, I'm not pointing at me personally, we're simply not producing enough people, right? The birth rates are declining and have been, Ryan, actually on an average basis over the last 40 years. And then underpinning that or overlaying that, you've got most countries saying, we don't want people coming in. We want to protect our borders. We want to reduce people coming into our country because we don't have the infrastructure, the healthcare, the buildings, the properties. So please stay out, right? So you don't have those migrants coming in to do the jobs that might have been done previously. And even if you look at UK, by way of example, Ryan, they brought in Brexit a couple of years ago, right? Or 2 years ago, it was enacted. So you had all these foreigners that basically had to leave in some cases, right? And the labour, it completely disrupted and distorted the labor market, right? And they're really struggling now to get jobs done. So that's a lot of talk. I appreciate, Ryan. But I suppose my question is, in your view, can we do anything about what's been described as this labor market paradox? You know, you got what seems like talent scarcity or lack of talent availability. You got full employment in most markets, and you got bloody companies hiring like it's out of fashion. What could be done about it in your view, Ryan?
You know, if I could answer that question, I'd be making a lot more money than I make right now. I'm also glad that you went down that rabbit hole, because you're trying to get me in trouble here. What are you trying to do? You're going to get what? Who do you pick, Trump or Biden? Don't ask me that question.
No, definitely not. We'll save that for a beer, right? When I'm next over, and we're in Europe here, right?
That's not the time or place. Geez, there's so much there to unpack. I think, one thing that does help with some of this is the remote nature of the world now. I mean, you and I are talking and we're nowhere near each other physically. I mean, think about that for like 15, 20 years ago, that wasn't even really possible. We could talk on the phone, sure.
Yes.
We're face to face.
Yeah.
Right. Which is really cool. So I think that solves some of our problems, but that's kind of been happening, right? It's been in the space. I think it's still being accepted though. Like I do feel like there's a little bit of I've coined it as outsourcing 2.0. And I'm kind of specifically talking about the Western world, and I've got my obviously US perspective and all that, but I've definitely seen companies in the US start to look at India a bit more, look at Singapore, look at the Philippines, look at, Asia Pac, right? Look at LATAM more, that's a little easier for the US because you got time zones, right? Than our time zones, but the labor force is maybe, growing there. That can, the more technical labor force, they're trying to put more investment in that. And so we can use more folks down there. I've seen a lot of our MSP clients starting to outsource again more than years ago. So I think they're trying to solve through outsourcing.
Yes.
That's been done before. I think you're thinking about what else can we do? I mean, the immediate thing that comes to mind for me, and I think we've talked a lot about this for many years in the industry. I just don't know if we're doing a great job of it. Maybe there's some companies out there that are doing a good job of it. Maybe we could encourage some of our clients, or maybe our programs could do a better job of this. But I think it's like reskilling people.
Yes.
It's really important right now. Because I do think there's a lot of people out there working certain jobs where they would prefer to be doing something different, but they just don't have the opportunity to do it because there's programs are expensive, or, college costs are out of control and things like that. And so they're sitting there like, my hands are tied. I can't go back to school because it's too expensive. And there's nobody out here willing to reskill me, where I think there's a lot of people that would be more than happy to jump in and do that if companies gave them the opportunity, or if programs gave them an opportunity to do it. But again, I think we've talked about that a lot. I don't know how well we're doing it. So that's one thing. And then there's all the developing countries, right, that are out there still that can we, what's that look like in the future? How do we get those, how do we get those labor forces educated and available? Because again, due to the remote nature of our world now, we can hire in a lot of places. So if we have a developing country that's on the up and up, they have good programs in place to educate their folks and prepare them for the workforce. That's great. But we need more of that too, because to your point, our unemployment rates are pretty low historically.
So Rad, I really enjoyed what you said there about reskilling and upskilling and about looking to higher growth labor markets for the talent. But I want to come on to a subject that you and I know pretty well. It's not MSP. It goes back to our staffing and recruitment days. And I want to get your thoughts on the evolution of staffing. And I appreciate that your parent company is one of the largest staffing companies in the United States, right? So you might have a different view to me, but my view on the evolution of the staffing sector is quite narrow, Ryan. I feel that it hasn't really changed hugely, right? It hasn't had its big bang moment. And a lot of people have criticized me for that rather simplistic view. But I always compare recruitment and staffing to open outcry trading in the 1980s. Of course, you'll be familiar, Ryan, with the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, the New York Stock Exchange, the London Stock Exchange. And back in the 80s, right, and before that, they used to wave pieces of paper. They'd be shouting their orders at each other and doing deals in this massive open outcry pitch and bullpen. And when I started in recruitment in 2006, 2007, we were set up like a huge trading floor, like a bank would have, Ryan, and we were on the phone and we were banging the phones like crazy. We had our database, our CRM. I think LinkedIn was just came out a few years after that, and we were trying to work out how best to use that to find people. But if you look at the exchanges in the 80s, their big bang moment was when the computer came in, right? And the computers were able to execute the trades, right? And you didn't need 200, 300 people standing around this bullpen shouting orders at each other, right? The tech did the work, and traders became much more sophisticated, right? And it strikes me that staffing hasn't really had that big bang model, right? The model is still essentially the same, right? You've got recruiter, client, candidate, recruiter matches the two, and the telephone used to be their greatest tool and ally. I think that's changed so somewhat, particularly as I had younger people working with me even back 10 years ago when I was still running staffing businesses, right? But what's your view on that? It's admittedly quite a narrow view. Do you think there has been a big bang moment, Ryan, or do you think there's been much more incremental positive changes in the staffing sector?
I think I can see what you're saying. I totally hear you. I don't think it's quite what you grew up in or what I grew up in, the boiler room kind of feeling. Right?
Yes.
Not from the corruption side of it,
Yes.
like
The setup.
Like hits, right? I think they still have fun in those offices. It's important to collaborate. So there's a lot of collaboration that goes on in those like recruiting, the PED or the recruiting center or whatever various customer companies call them. I do feel like there are certain firms out there utilizing technology to their advantage. I kind of see what you're saying around like, there were all these traders and now you didn't need 300 traders anymore.
Yeah.
I think that's happening. I think that firms are not having to hire as many recruiters. Look, the human aspect is always going to be a part of our world. I believe that. Like I may look at this video 30 years from now and, it's all robots, and recruiting companies doing the work. It's two fake avatars having a podcast together. How stupid. But I do believe that there is a very important human aspect to recruiting. Okay. But I think when you talent marketplaces, things like that, a lot of times I think people think of talent marketplaces as like what an internal company might use. You think of direct sourcing and those types of things. Those are all unique, what I call like creative sourcing models. You're still sourcing people. You still need humans to do it, but you're using some technology to give you an advantage, and you're using your brain. So that's direct sourcing, and I'm hitting that at the highest of levels. If you go back to like the individual recruiting, I think the smart ones are figuring out a way to say, I can utilize technology to take this job description and match it with all of these people I used to have to call.
Yes.
And this may be totally off base, but I could envision a group, a recruiter getting on the phone and having to call 60 candidates to find the two people they wanted to submit.
Yeah.
Right.
Fairly.
Now the smarter, more advanced recruiting companies are saying, wait, I can utilize technology that I've either built in-house, artificial intelligence, RPA, whatever you want to call it, right? To take that 60 that I would have called in the past, narrow it down to 20.
Yes.
And now I'm only going to call these 20 because these 20 came up as like an 80% match.
Yes.
But I, as a human, now have to get on the phone with those 20 and figure out, do they really have any interest in this job? Has their pay demands changed? Do they want $15,000 more a year, or pounds, or, whatever, euros? Or do they still want that amount of money that they said they wanted when they filled out their application? Like there's still going to be a human aspect, but maybe you don't have to call 60 people.
Yeah.
You have to call 10 or 20 and then narrow that down to your one or two that you're going to actually send over. And I think that also gives your client more confidence as well, because you can tell your client, look, we've got this really neat tool, this really neat algorithm that we've built for you, for the client in mind, to say, to take all the, and I know there's bias with technology as well, but hopefully there's less. And,
right.
We're going to take all that out the window. It's going to be quantitative. And then I'm going to get those 15 or 20, resumes that I could call. And then I send you the top 2 or 3, Mr. Manager. So that's kind of and I think that saves a lot of time. Imagine
it does.
Going from 60 to 20.
Yeah.
That's the third.
Yeah. Dude.
And you may have 60 calls in one day in the battling. That's how I used to think 80 calls a day, right? Like, so, you've reduced that to 20 now. And so think about how many more positions you can fill and how much more efficient you can be.
Yeah.
And I feel like quality is going to go up.
Ryan, I agree. I've got this thing in my mind about how the staffing sector can protect itself from being disintermediated by technology, right? And how they can use technology in the way that you've just referenced there, and I agree. And I've got this thing in my head about recruitment companies and staffing providers becoming like talent concierge. When you go to the nice hotels or a decent hotel, the first thing you do in a new city, if you haven't been on Google and done your research, you go down to the concierge and say, hey, listen, what's the deal? Where's safe? Where's not? Where can I eat that's decent and isn't going to rip me off? I think the really good recruitment companies and recruiters and headhunters will reposition themselves and go back to the basics of what makes a good recruiter, actually, which is that guide, that talent concierge or guide. And I think that's going to be a good way for the best recruiters to protect themselves. Ryan, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I love that. I love the idea. I use the word concierge all the time.
I love that.
In that situation, but I think it's a great example and a great analogy for sure.
So, Ryan, we've talked about AI briefly, but I really want to get your take on AI and its potential negative impact on jobs. And I've been reading about AI for, I think, about the last 4 years, quite seriously. And I'm for those listeners to the show, they'll know I'm a total nerd and bookworm, right? So I'm reading all the time, always recommended books, right? I'm not going to bore everyone with recommending more books in AI. But in short, the more I read about it, the more likely it appears, Ryan, that jobs will be displaced at a rate of knots, because technology is getting cheaper and people on a general basis are getting more expensive, right? And every business will have a profit motive or a competitive motive to do something about it, i.e. embrace AI. And oftentimes, if you embrace AI, the net of that is going to be jobs replacement or jobs displacement. And what backs that up, Ryan, is some analysis and research by the World Economic Forum. And what they're saying in their most recent report is that up to 60% of middle class or white collar jobs, as they're called, are going to be displaced. Now, the answer to that is, well, there's going to be more jobs. But in their report, they say they're not so sure. They can't predict this, and maybe no one can. But as a dad, right, my kids are 7 and 4. I'm quite concerned about the potential negative societal impacts on AI. And of course, Ryan, listen, I grew up in the 80s, same as you. I watched Terminator 2 when I shouldn't have, right? So that might have informed my biases here. But in short, Ryan, what I really want to get to is, what's your thoughts on all this? Is it good, bad, ugly, or nightmarish?
I think it was Elon Musk that recently said that 100% of jobs would be replaced by AI at some point, which is a bold statement to make.
Bold.
I don't know obviously I don't know the answer. My thoughts and my opinion are different than what will happen, right? But if I had to go out on a limb and, give Brian Baker's perspective on AI, I mean, we're at the tip of the iceberg. Just like every technology that disrupts, I feel like it's like you said, there's kind of like a curve. So I think we're kind of like here right now, and maybe it goes like this, and it replaces 60% of the jobs, as you've read recently. I just don't know how long is it flat, right? Is it 10 years?
Yeah.
Is it 50 years? 100 years? Right now, I think the immediate thought that went through my mind was we just talked about earlier in this podcast how we don't have enough people to do the jobs. So kind of right now, we need the help, right? We need the
Okay.
so yeah. And after that, like we were just saying, oh, there's too many jobs, we can't even fill them. So maybe there's this happy medium that we get to. It's like, okay, great, we have enough humans for the work we need humans for. We have enough work for these robots to do the work, right? Or these algorithms, or these, the artificial intelligence. And then if you get past that tipping point is where it gets scary, where there's not enough jobs anymore for humans. So I just don't know. I'm very skeptical, because you can read as many books as you've read. You've probably seen
Exactly.
it, Connor.
Yes.
Where
Conflicts.
one book is like, no, totally
Correct.
not gonna
Yes.
be a thing. It's enough. And then others are like super scared. And
Exactly.
they say what, which is 100% of jobs will be gone.
Yeah. They're like, oh no.
So are we all just going to be on like some government pay rate then at that point, because no one has any work to do?
I know, but look, Brad, that is this,
Just all of
yeah.
just going to like,
I know, dude, but like that's the thing. I couldn't do that. Like I need a work, right? And I think people fundamentally, when you strip it back, they need a purpose, right? Something to do, right? Whether it's, if you're a homemaker, it's making your home correct, right? It's making you sure, if you're a homemaker, your children and your family are looked after and your house is looked after, or if you're the CEO or the president or you're the digital marketing manager, you need that purpose, right? You need that purpose. And I think that's what concerns me. Now, of course, it's easy to go to the dystopian and the dark, right? My wife is saying to me, Connor, you're reading too much about this stuff. Dial it back. It's not going to be that bad, right? And then I go, hey, you seen this robot on television or YouTube? And she's like, okay, maybe you're right, right? But anyway, I think you're right. I think there's room for nuance in this, and in life. And I think we've got everything now is reduced to either it's this or it's that, and there's no room anymore for the grey, the nuance in the middle. And I think that's one of the problems. Actually, I know this is a business and a future work podcast, but I think when you strip it back, that's what's happening in society. Everyone forgets that people are people, that they're nuanced. They're not automatons that think X and only think X. There's room for everything.
yeah, it can be both. The
Yeah.
answer is it can be
I agree.
both.
Yeah,
Like,
I agree.
I'm 100% with you. I'm a very middle ground thinker on
Yes.
most topics in life.
Yes.
It's like I can see the good on one side and the bad on one side, and there's just not enough of that right now.
I
And
agree.
even on topics, it's
Yes.
to your point, it's either disaster or it's like the best thing that's ever happened for humanity.
Yes.
The thing that I'll go back to in the final statement I'll make about kind of AI and whether it just places jobs is history tells us, and I know this is a little different, but history tells us that every time there's been some sort of revolution, the Industrial Revolution, when the internet first came out, there's always been nervousness,
Yes.
but it's always resulting in, other jobs. Whether it creates more or less, I don't know. But, I have to imagine, one of the most popular jobs now is AI development.
Yeah.
Already.
I know.
We don't even know if it's really going to work yet, right?
Yeah,
Like,
that's true.
we're sure that it's all going to work the way we think it's.
That is true.
Companies are just putting so much money into it. Hence the reason NVIDIA and Broadcom and all these companies are doing so. And great, good for them, right?
Good
but
for them.
Microsoft and Google and all the big names that everybody knows are investing in AI. Is it going to pay off? I bet you they hope it is.
I bet.
But we don't really truthfully know yet.
No, we don't.
So
We don't.
I still kind of fall into the camp that it is going to augment us in a way that's beneficial to our current jobs, and we'll be able to spend more time being strategic. We'll be able to spend more time on things we like about our job and less on the like mundane things that a computer can do for us.
Yeah.
That's my like optimistic hope, is that I've got this pie of all the things I have to do.
Yeah.
And I can get 30% of that pie that I really dislike. I can give that to the computers. I can give that to the now I can do all some of the things I like, you know.
Yeah. Hey, Ryan, I think that will strike a chord with our audience. It certainly strikes a chord with me because we use Monday.com as our project management board, and I'm just thinking of all the bloody boards I need to fill in for this. So if AI could do that stuff for me, amen to that, my friend, right? I'm in, right? I'm in. So this is what I love about chatting to you, Ryan. There's always an optimistic turn to the conversation. So, Ryan, I just want to cover one topic briefly. If I think back to the early days of my career, you know, working from home and working remotely or working hybrid, like it was a gift, right? It wasn't a right, it was a gift, and you really, really had to earn it, right? And then, you know, back, I think it was about maybe 2012, something like that. I was working in the RPO MSP game for the first time, or sector, and I spent a lot of time traveling, and I felt less need to go into the office, Ryan, right? And then set up CXC in Europe. We didn't have much money, so we thought, well, let's make this business fully remote, right? So I don't think that works for everyone. So really want to do in short is get your take on remote work. Did you ever think back bloody 8 years ago that you'd be in your office most days, but you know, only 10% of the people would be there, if even?
Funny. I think every company has to make the right decision for their situation. You know, there's pluses and minuses when it comes to pros and cons to remote work. You know, pros are things like the most common one you hear is I don't have to commute, right? Like nobody wants to commute, but then like you can have the exact opposite side of that is like your work and your home just gets mixed up. And there's like actually a lot of studies coming out now from very reputable sources, Harvard Business Review,
Yes.
Forbes, you look at them. And there's a lot of studies that like they're saying that remote employees actually burn out quicker. Which is interesting because I think a lot of people thought that burnout would happen quicker if you were in the office all the time and had to have that horrible commute, you know, or whatever the case may be. I actually love my commute because I like popping on some sports radio or podcasts.
Yes.
I'll go back and listen to this. But, you know, I like to be able to decompress on my way in and decompress on my way home and have those boundaries. People talk so much about how important boundaries are in life, but we don't have boundaries with work in our home. Like that doesn't make sense to me. So
yes,
that's just my view. I think that, you know, studies are showing that there's some issues with boundaries between work and life, and that can result in burnout. You know, the other thing that I think is interesting is like, is it good for the employee to be remote? Sure, they have more job, maybe prospects, which, you know, can be a negative to the you know, the employer, which whatever, you know, you're the big bad employer, right? So, but like so that's good for the employee, like being able to work remote, I guess, from that perspective. It's great for certain individuals. Some people are extroverts, some people are introverts. So that's why I say that the individual is so important. One thing that I will hone in on though, that I think gets lost in all of it is I think fully remote environments, and this may not be popular with certain companies that do this, and that's okay. We don't have to think the same way, right? But I think fully remote environments kind of let you off the hook or give you an excuse to not be a great company culturally. Because you do lose culture when you're fully remote all the time. Like you can't collaborate at the highest levels. You lose camaraderie. Their accessibility gets lost, like ad hoc conversations. I mean, how many times have I solved something that I wouldn't have solved if I had to try to ping someone on Teams and find them? You know, because the idea was right then. I went to the water cooler. And knocked on the door. Hey, do you have a second? And you just got this amazing conversation about an ad hoc topic that you weren't even thinking about when the morning began. And that gets lost more in fully remote environments. So like, if I had to like break it down, I would say that Monument's very unique. We have hybrid employees in certain cities. We have hybrid employees where they work 2 days in the office and they're Monday, Friday at home. We have people that are fully remote, and we have people that are on site with our clients 5 days a week.
Yeah.
So like our company, and that creates its own challenges because you have people saying, well, why do they get to work from home? And why have to be works here full time on site? It's like, well, we screened you for that. We asked you if you were good. Here, that's the job.
Yeah.
Like really unique situation at Monument. And I think that the client matters, where you live matters. But if I had my way and I could make it all the same everywhere, I would say hybrid is wonderful. You get a little bit of both worlds.
Yeah.
You get, the 1 or 2 days at home where you can just kind of get after it. You got the quiet, and just get all the things done you need to get done and have the few calls you need to have. And then the days when you're in the office, you get to like scratch that like people itch. You and I are both people.
Yeah.
We love people, Connor.
We do. Yeah.
Energy from
yes.
People.
Yeah. I agree.
I think it's another one of those things where you can't be on one side or the other completely. You have to use discernment and understand like what the right situation is for either your business or even parts of your business.
I think that those last 2 points are extremely important for our listeners, Ryan, and I think it's a theme throughout our conversation today about really great practical advice that can be implemented, right? And I think our listeners, if you're thinking about changing something or thinking about your current operating model, it might not be working. Listen to what Ryan's saying there. I think it's great advice, Ryan. So, Ryan, unfortunately, I'm going to bring our conversation to a close, but I'm looking forward to seeing you in Ireland for a Guinness or two, and all the cliches will apply, right? And hopefully Georgia Tech get the win, I think, if that's okay to say that.
No,
not one. No, all right. Oh, come on. All right. Even better. Right. So, all right. I won't be wearing my Georgia Tech, my Jackets cap for sure. But Ryan, I've loved our conversation. I'm really proud and pleased about the friendship and the relationship that we've struck up over the years. But I want to finish our conversation today with a question I ask all of our guests, which is as follows. What is your prediction or predictions for the future of work?
Oh, goodness. We hit on so much of it. It's creating an environment, I think globally. It can't just be, national. I think globally, creating an environment where we can give folks opportunities to thrive, because we need to fill a lot of positions, as you know. Let's bring AI and automation into our workforce responsibly so that we don't have bias, but we can leverage the amazing thing that is technology and make our lives easier, and create better products or services for our customers. And then let's just continue to be amazing business leaders. Like at the end of the day, we started with that. I could do a whole podcast with you on what I think a good business leader looks like. We'll save that for your 200th episode.
Yeah,
because I'm going to need to build that content out. But at the end of the day, like we only touched on that a tad. But if I think of the future of work, so much of it comes back to the people. Again, humanizing work.
Yeah.
And so we've got all these neat things like AI and RPA. We've got the ability to upskill and educate, countries that are kind of on the up and up, right?
Yeah.
So those are all great things that I think will impact the future of work. But let's just do the right thing for our workforces that you and I can touch each and every day. Like you go back and get it done for your people, Connor.
Yes.
I'm going to go do this on my end and take care of them and create a path for upward mobility within the company, help grow the company. So there's opportunities within our company. And if they're not within our company and someone outgrows my company because they've got too big for, or they've got skills that they need to take elsewhere, then I'm happy for them too.
Me too.
Right? I say that all the time. I'm like, I can't be everything to all people. And if we've created a monster, so to speak, a good one, and you have to go somewhere else to fly free, then I'm all about that. I want you to be fulfilled at work. And hopefully that's here at Monument for a long, long time. But if we grow you to a space where we don't have a spot for you and you've got an opportunity somewhere else, then gosh, by all means, go do it. So let's just be awesome leaders where we can help grow our people personally, financially, professionally, all those things.
Wow. Ryan, I absolutely love that. And I think doing the right thing is often overlooked, but I know from all our dealings over the years that that's the fundamental thing. So, Ryan, I love the advice. I love your ethos, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show. I'm really grateful of all the things that we've done together, and here's to a bright future for our teams and our companies, and of course to us. And Ryan, thanks so much for your time. I know you're an incredibly busy fellow, and I appreciate you giving the time for our listeners and our audience and for the show. So, Ryan, continued success to you and to your team and to your business. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing you in Ireland. So take care and thanks again.
All right. See you in Dublin. Bye.
See you in Dublin.
Thank you for listening to the Open Talent Report with Conor Heaney. If you found this podcast informative and engaging, make sure you subscribe, tell your friends, and follow us on all your favorite streaming platforms.